We have the cash that people need. Sometimes people can't make ends meet, and we offer that to everybody.
You guys get recognized everywhere you go?
We get recognized everywhere. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. I mean, we were at Universal yesterday, walking through the park.
One cast member died alone, and the show that made him famous never said a word. Another lost everything in front of 3.4 million viewers, while others disappeared so quietly that most people never even noticed they were gone. For 9 seasons, Hardcore Pawn turned real employees into entertainment. But after the cameras left, what actually happened to the people the show built its ratings around? And how many of them were worse off because of it? Join us as we find out everything that happened to the Hardcore Pawn cast members. Carl Deals. On the morning of August 4th, 2014, Carl Deals was found unresponsive inside his Chicago home. He was 48 years old. The Cook County medical examiner confirmed his death that same afternoon. There was no trauma or warning. The cause of death was never publicly reported, and the show that had put his face in front of millions of viewers had already been canceled 7 months earlier. By the time Carl died, the cameras were gone. The production had moved on, and there was no platform left to acknowledge what had happened. Viewers who watched Hardcore Pawn. Chicago knew Carl by a different name. On screen, he was Carlos, the security guard at Royal Pawn Shop on South Clark Street in Chicago's financial district. He had worked there for well over a decade before True TV ever pointed a camera at the building. The Coen brothers, Randy and Wayne, who owned the shop and bickered their way through every episode, had built Royal Pawn into a recognizable Chicago institution. Carl had been part of that institution long before it became a television set. The Chicago spin-off premiered on January 1st, 2013, and immediately drew the highest ratings True TV had ever recorded for a new series debut. Carl was part of that launch. He stood at the door of a pawn shop located directly across the street from a federal correctional center, in a neighborhood where the clientele came in under serious financial pressure. And he did that job every day, with the same steadiness that had made him indispensable to the shop long before the show arrived. His death came at one of the worst possible moments for Royal Pawn. Just months before Carl was found at his home, 2 employees named Jeremy Jackson and Carl Bell had been arrested after stealing Rolex watches and jewelry from the shop, and then attempting to sell the stolen goods back to the same store. The arrests had embarrassed the shop publicly. Randy had called it a betrayal. The operation was still dealing with the fallout when Carl died. He had never been connected to any of it. His record at Royal Pawn was clean, and everyone who worked alongside him knew it. Randy posted a tribute that said Carl had been part of their family for many years, that they were glad he had been part of their lives, and that he would be missed. That tribute, posted to the Facebook page that had been created for Carl's character during the show's run, was one of the only public acknowledgments that he had existed at all. There was no news segment, no reunion episode, no statement from True TV. The network had canceled the Chicago show in January 2014. Carl's death in August of that year happened in the silence that follows cancellation, when a production has closed its files and has no further obligation to the people it once filmed. An autopsy was scheduled for the morning after Carl was found. Whatever it determined was never released to the press and never covered by any outlet that had filmed him. The only public goodbye Carl Deals received came from a Facebook post written by a man who used to work beside him, Randy Cohen, standing in the rubble of a show that had already been canceled, saying that Carl had been part of their family for years and that they would miss him very much. That post was the entire public record. One paragraph on Facebook. That was what 9 years behind a camera at Royal Pawn Shop was worth. when the production was done with you. Nobody called and nobody came. The cameras were already gone. But the next story was loud. It was live. And 3.4 million people watched every second of it. The question is, did they realize they were watching someone's life get torn apart in real time? Joel Shannon. Joel Shannon spent 6 seasons as the head of security at American Jewelry and Loan, and for 6 seasons, he was the most trusted person in the building. He stood well over 6 feet tall, carried himself with the kind of calm that stopped confrontations before they started, and showed up every day to stand between the Gold family and whoever walked through that door. The show leaned on him constantly. In a building that ran on conflict, Joel was the person who resolved it, and he did that job for 6 years without the cameras ever catching him in a serious mistake. That ended on the night of the season 6 finale. Security footage taken from inside the shop, specifically from the desk of Jeff, the store's jewelry technician, had captured Joel taking scrap gold from the premises. Les confronted him with the footage on camera. Joel was arrested and then fired on the spot. The confrontation, the footage, the arrest, and the firing all aired to the largest audience in true TV history. 3.4 million viewers, the network's highest-rated broadcast ever recorded. That was the night Joel's 6 years of service ended, and it ended in front of more people than most television events ever reach. By the following morning, the clip had spread to every entertainment site that covered reality television. People who had never watched a full episode of Hardcore Pawn knew Joel's name by noon. The search results attached to his name from that day forward contained one event, described the same way, in every result: the man who stole from Les Gold on camera. That is not a small thing. In the security industry, where employers run background checks and Google names before they return calls, a single result like that can close a door before you ever get to explain yourself. Joel had no statement on record. He gave no interviews. There was no version of events from his side sitting anywhere online to balance what the clip showed. The clip was the whole story, a 2-minute confrontation pulled from a 6-year career, and it was the first thing anyone found for years. The man who showed up for 6 seasons, who de-escalated hundreds of situations the cameras never bothered to film, existed in the public record as one thing only. The production moved into season 7 and introduced Byron as the new head of security, treating the change as routine. Joel's 6 years of standing at the door of a Detroit pawn shop, absorbing the physical pressure of removing desperate people from a volatile building day after day on camera, were not discussed. The show had what it needed from him. The season 6 finale drew 3.4 million viewers. The accounting was done. Finding work in the security industry with that footage attached to his name was not a straightforward process. The clip was not going anywhere. It remained searchable, shareable, and attached to him in every professional context for years. Joel eventually built something new, High Gear Transportation, a trucking company in Livonia, Michigan, where he lives with his wife Felice and their children. He got there. But the 6 seasons of showing up and doing the job right were not what people found when they looked for Joel Shannon. They found one night. And that one night was the only version of him the internet kept. Joel did something wrong. That at least explains what happened to him. The next person never stole anything, never caused a scene, and she was removed anyway. So, what does it actually take to disappear from Hardcore Pawn? Lily Gold. Lily Gold appeared in 6 episodes of Hardcore Pawn during its first season. Not as a central figure or in the middle of a confrontation or a deal. She was just there, in the background, moving through the shop, present in the frame the way someone is present when they belong to a place. She had been part of American Jewelry and Loan since Les opened it in 1978. By the time the cameras arrived, she had spent over 30 years in that building. She was Les's wife. She was Seth's mother. She was Ashley's mother. She ran the office. The business existed, in large part, because of her. Season 2 began, and Lily was not in it. Lily disappeared from Hardcore Pawn, and nothing about it was ever addressed on screen or in public by anyone connected to the show. She never spoke about it either. One day, she was part of the story, and then she wasn't. And the series continued as if that version of events had never existed. This happened across 8 more seasons, more than 150 episodes. Ratings that climbed from 1.5 million viewers in Season 1 to 3.4 million by Season 6. The audience that grew up watching Hardcore Pawn, the millions of people who tuned in during Seasons 4, 5, and 6, who watched Les negotiate, watched Seth push back, watched Ashley hold the line, none of them knew Lily existed. The woman who had built the business they were watching had been removed from it so completely and so early that her absence was invisible. The reason lies in what True TV decided between Season 1 and Season 2. The first season had been built around a specific reality. Detroit was dangerous, the shop was armed, the Golds were operating in a city under genuine economic collapse, and the show did not look away from that. True TV reviewed the season and decided the tone was too dark. From Season 2 onward, all mention of danger was dropped. The format was retooled around less bargaining with customers over unusual items, with the conflict between Seth and Ashley as the dramatic engine. It was lighter, faster, more broadly entertaining, and it had no place for a calm, operational presence whose contribution to the business was invisible on screen precisely because it worked. Lily did not generate conflict. She did not make dramatic deals or lose her temper on camera. She kept the office running. In the new format, that was not a role, so the role was removed. No conversation was filmed. No goodbye was shot. What that decision actually meant was this. A woman who had spent over 30 years building a business watched the television version of that business erase her from it, and had no platform to respond. She could not correct the record on camera because she was no longer on camera. She could not address the audience because the audience did not know she existed. The show had taken her story, restructured it around other people, and continued airing for 8 more years to an audience that had no reason to ask where she had gone. There was no version of events available to them that included her because the only version that reached them was the one True TV chose to show. The American Jewelry and Loan website said it plainly. Les had opened the shop with her support. That support was documented publicly, in writing, on the business's own page. It just wasn't on television. Nobody filmed Lily walking away. She was simply there for 6 episodes, and then the show went on for 8 more years, without her name ever being spoken again. What came next was broadcast to 3.4 million people. The cameras were rolling, the confrontation was live, and by the next morning, everyone had an opinion about someone they'd never actually heard speak. Christina. Christina worked the front window at American Jewelry and Loan for several seasons of Hardcore Pawn. Her last name was never shown on screen. She handled the position that put her in direct contact with every customer who walked through the door carrying something they needed to convert into cash quickly. The front window at a pawn shop on Detroit's 8 Mile Road was not a quiet post. The people who came in were often under serious financial pressure. Some were difficult, and all of them needed something resolved fast. Christina handled that job on camera, season after season. Season 8 of Hardcore Pawn aired the episode that ended her time at the shop. Les discovered that Christina had been pawning fake jewelry items under her own name and taking the money from those transactions. Les confronted her on camera with what he had found. He told her he believed she had not been working alone and offered to let the matter go if she identified an accomplice. Christina told him she had acted alone. She was arrested. The confrontation, the accusation, and the arrest all aired nationally. The clip became one of the most discussed moments of that season. It circulated online and generated comment threads that ran for days. Christina's face and name, attached to the footage of her arrest, became searchable and permanently available to anyone who looked. For the Gold family, the episode was content. A dramatic Season 8 moment that gave viewers exactly the kind of confrontation the show had been delivering for years. For Christina, it was the public record she would carry out of the building when the police took her away. That asymmetry is worth sitting with. The Gold family owned the building, owned the brand, and controlled how the confrontation was framed before it ever aired. Christina had none of that. She had no producer. She had no edit. Whatever happened in that room, whatever context existed around what she did and why she did it, none of it made the cut. What made the cut was the accusation, the denial, and the arrest. That footage then became permanently attached to her name on a platform that does not expire and does not offer the right of reply. What happened to Christina after that broadcast is a blank. No journalist followed up. No court record connected to her name reached the press. The episode aired, the comments ran for days, and the show moved on. She walked out of the building, and the public record of her life ended at the door. Christina's arrest at least made the news cycle. What happened to the next person didn't even register. No firing, no confrontation, no clip. He was just gone, and nobody noticed. Fielding Teichmann. Fielding Teichmann worked security at American Jewelry and Loan from the first season of Hardcore Pawn through the 6th. His long, thick beard made him one of the most immediately recognizable members of the entire cast. He appeared in the background of countless episodes, visible in the frame during negotiations, confrontations, and the daily chaos of a Detroit pawn shop that was simultaneously a television production. He was not a central character in the way Les, Seth, or Ashley were, but he was a constant. Regular viewers knew his face the way they knew the layout of the shop itself. After Season 6, Fielding stopped appearing. The show did not explain. There was no conversation between Fielding and any member of the Gold family broadcast to viewers. There was no acknowledgement from the production that he had been part of the cast for 6 years and would not be returning. The Season 7 premiere introduced Byron as the new head of security. Joel had been fired in the Season 6 finale, and the shop moved forward with a new security arrangement. Fielding was simply absent from it, without a word from anyone about where he had gone or why. Joel's firing was the highest-rated episode in true TV history. Rich Pile's dispute with Les aired to millions. Christina's arrest ran in comment threads for days. When the cameras had something to gain from showing a person leave, they showed it. Fielding's departure generated none of that. So the production did what it always did when there was nothing to gain. It said nothing. Fielding did not publicly respond to his departure from the show. He gave no interviews. He did not post grievances on social media the way other former cast members eventually did. His social media presence after leaving the show was minimal and offered nothing about what had happened or what came next. In 2016, 2 years after production on Hardcore Pawn halted, Fielding relocated from Detroit to Austin, Texas. The move put several hundred miles between him and the shop on 8 Mile Road, where he had spent 6 years of his working life. No public record explained why he moved, what he was doing in Austin, or whether the time he had spent on the show had made the subsequent years easier or harder. The beard that had made him visually distinctive on True TV was not sufficient to make him findable in any professional or public capacity afterward. His IMDb page listed his credit on Hardcore Pawn and nothing else. The Cinemaholic, which published the most thorough cast update available, confirmed in 2024 that Fielding had moved to Austin in 2016 and had maintained only a minimal social media presence since. Beyond that, nothing was documented. He had been on American television for 6 full seasons, across hundreds of episodes, and had left behind almost no public trace of what came after. He gave the show 6 years. The show gave him back exactly what it gave everyone else: nothing. Did Hardcore Pawn simply document lives falling apart? Or did the cameras help cause the damage? And if millions of people watched these moments every week and kept coming back for more, what were they really watching for? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.